Good morning and welcome to everyone in the audience here with us this morning, our media friends, and everyone joining us via Zoom. We are now back after almost a month with our new forum. My name is Daniel Long, and I will be your moderator today for today's forum entitled People's War versus Poverty Economic Doom Without BRI, Belt and Road Initiative. We have 5 speakers with us today, and the main topics will be People's War versus Poverty by Kaado Paglinawan, Economic Gloom Without BRI by Herman Camentong Laurel, The Folly of BRI Withdrawal by Professor Ana Malindugoy, and joining us via Zoom, special guest, Predatory Meralco will be presented by Romeo Butch Junia, former Undersecretary former press undersecretary. Let us now welcome Professor Ana Malindugoy for her opening statements and her presentation on the folly of BRI withdrawal.
Hello, can I be naririnig ako?
Loud and clear.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, thank you so much, Kamentong, at saka sa ibang speakers for allowing me to speak first, no? Kasi may ibang appointment ako right after mga 10:30, so it would be good for me to speak first and then the rest. But I will try as far as my best to be in the Zoom, even though I'm doing some other things. So I just read quickly my opening statement, which is not that long. But before that, let me express my warm greetings to everyone who's in the Zoom and also who's in on-site attending this forum. This forum is quite interesting because it talks about issues that is very close to the heart of Filipinos, and that's poverty, I think. No, so just let me give you a little of background about the BRI and why is it important. Then I'll proceed to trying to explain a little bit why is it important that we should not be out of BRI, or we should be as a country be part of the BRI. So China's Belt and Road Initiative has been perceived as a game changer, and its impact is nothing short of inspiring. This ambitious infrastructure and economic development project, initiated and launched in 2013, encompasses over 140 countries and is poised to reshape the global economic landscape. Some of the reasons why the BRI, or the Belt and Road Initiative, is a source of inspiration and a game changer for the developing world, meaning developing countries, the South-South, no, or the Global South, would include infrastructure development, poverty reduction, trade facilitation, technology transfer and innovation, cultural exchanges, green development, financial inclusion, global cooperation, and multilateralism. So meaning these are the things that actually BRI facilitates or contributes to the development and progress, or the quest for development and economic progress of the developing world across different continents. The BRI is not only a monumental undertaking and colossal infrastructure and economic development project that aims to connect Asia, Europe, and Africa, even Latin America, and even Western Europe to a greater extent, through a network of roads, railways, ports, and other infrastructure, but it is also a visionary undertaking that transcends borders, culture, and ideologies. It is without a doubt one of the most ambitious and transformative initiatives of our time. Conceived by China but embraced by nations across Asia, Africa, Europe, and even beyond, it embodies the spirit of cooperation, connectivity, and shared prosperity. It has evolved into a collaborative effort that spans continents, aiming to reshape the world's economic and geopolitical landscape. As one of the early participants of this initiative, the BRI, the Philippines has received Chinese investment and loans for various projects. However, based on some recent developments, it seems that there is somewhat a reversal in the Philippines being part and parcel of the BRI. Just probably a month ago, there was a report that, according to reports, Transport Secretary Jamie Bautista announced that few of the projects that is actually synchronized or under the BRI to a greater extent, and um, I think it should have been funded by Chinese investment, was it seems that it was announced that it was scrapped. So it seems that this is kind of like an equivalent that, in some ways we're trying to be out of BRI or kind of withdrawing from BRI, because the announcement seems to be like that. So and then the justification behind is, anyway, the Philippines will have other options in terms of investment, and some of the option that was mentioned is the United States, Japan, South Korea. And also, of course, when you talk about Japan, that would mean probably lobbying more infrastructure funding from the Asian Development Bank. And when you talk about the United States, of course, you have the World Bank. However, there are consequences to this. I mean, I'm not saying that we cannot get funding from this financial institutions and from these countries, but there's always like a competition in every possible way. So thus far, and also if there's such a move from the side of the Philippine government not to engage too much with China's investment, it also shows that the relationship between the two countries, politically speaking, and even to a greater extent, would be is challenged, even that, and that would extend to the economic side or the economic relationship of the two countries, China and the Philippines. And this is also probably one of the reasons that has been floated why the Philippine government is trying to distance to some extent from receiving or applying or getting or availing of Chinese investments in terms of infrastructure project, is because of the increasing or the heightening tension in the South China Sea between the two countries. So these are some kind of factors that we can see why things are like this. Now, but the most important, I think, is to some extent to understand the consequences if in any case the Philippines will not be part of the BRI, or if the Philippines would have reduced or will not anymore try, to access Chinese investments, especially when you talk about infrastructure project, both soft infrastructure and hard infrastructure. So leaving Chinese BRI could have several negative consequences for the Philippines, particularly its economy. One of the imminent adverse impacts is obviously the loss of infrastructure investment from China. In the long run, this could negatively impact the long-term prospects of the country's infrastructure development, which could adversely affect the country's economic growth. One of the primary benefits of being part of the BRI is access to Chinese investment for both, again, as I've said earlier, soft and hard infrastructure projects like transportation network, energy system, and the most important actually at this time, given the what you call a knowledge-based society and the digital economy of many countries, is digital infrastructures. And as we know, China is, I think, if not number one, the second in terms of fourth industrial revolution. And when you talk about fourth industrial revolution, that talks about quantum, these are more of the high-tech part, like computer, internet, and AI and artificial intelligence and all of this high-tech technology. So they're number one actually, if you really analyze it properly. So in many ways, this infrastructure project funded through the BRI often create jobs directly and indirectly. So if in any case we will have less engagement with the BRI, or we will withdraw from the BRI, this could result, it will impact negatively the economic prospect of the country, not only in the short run, but I'm much more worried in the long run. And this could have social and economic consequences, of course. On another note, as we all know, the BRI aims to enhance connectivity between countries, which can facilitate trade. So the BRI, if you see, it's 140 countries, not only countries, actually companies and organizations. So the main reason why you have the BRI, or the main impetus behind the BRI, is trade facilitation too. So exchange of goods, import, export, and when you have trade, it benefits an economy like the Philippines. So if you leave the BRI or you don't engage too much, if the Philippines will not be active in the BRI, or to a greater extent, if in any case it comes to a point that really it would leave the BRI, this will affect our trade opportunities. Leaving the initiative may lead to reduced trade opportunities with other BRI member countries, potentially increasing logistic costs and making it more challenging for Filipino businesses to access international markets. Likewise, if the Philippines exits, or in a way, because the Department of Foreign Affairs I read a news that the Philippines is not necessarily leaving the BRI, but our engagement with the BRI and China's funding is quite less this time under this administration compared to the previous administration. So, if in any case this will impact trade opportunities for the country, as I've said, and then and also it will impact also to a greater extent identifying and securing sources for infrastructure project, because you don't really know, if even if you have access to World Bank, if you have access to ADB, or Asian Development Bank, because we have the United States a friend of the Philippines, Japan is a friend of the Philippines. Even then, securing this funding is not an easy thing, and it will take time and could be less favorable in terms of condition than the BRI funding. Because if you look at the World Bank and the ADB, especially World Bank, there are a lot of conditions before they even give you money. There are a lot of condition and exchanges, and sometimes it impacts on the political side of the Philippines. In a way, there's control, and more of it would be privatization, liberalization of the economy, which is not, if you really analyze things, it's not really good for the country. So, but when you talk about the BRI funding from banks, which China is the dominant, or is the major stockholder, there's no such thing as political, how do you call that, political conditionalities. It's just pure business. So there's a difference in terms of terms and conditions. So I think the Philippine government has to think through this, and really reflect if it's really good for the country, or it's wise really not to be engaged much with the BRI, or to leave BRI to some extent. So leaving the BRI may further strain diplomatic relation as well with China, potentially affecting broader bilateral cooperation and negotiation, including those related to the South China Sea dispute. Maintaining diplomatic channels and open communication is essential for resolving dispute peacefully and diplomatically. So to conclude, the decision by the Philippines to exit, or if there's any hint or any kind of insinuation for the current government to leave the BRI, should not be taken lightly. While there may be reasons for the Philippines to consider leaving the BRI, including the heightened political and geopolitical tension with China over the South China Sea dispute, it is essential to carefully assess the economic consequences, including the potential loss of infrastructure investment, impacts on economic growth, trade and connectivity, job creation, diplomatic relation, and the need to find alternative funding sources for our infrastructure development prospects. Balancing these factors is crucial for the current administration under the leadership of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. And in making and it's really important for the current government to have an informed decision that aligns with the country's long-term economic and strategic interests. It should not be myopic way of looking at things. It should also be not short-sighted. It should be as a country, we should always have this long-term perspective and assess the long-term impact if we're gonna make decision. And one crucial decision is if the Philippines will leave the BRI, if the Philippines will not be that active with the BRI, if the Philippines will not, try to access more Chinese investment, because the rest of ASEAN countries are very active in accessing Chinese investment, and they're benefiting from that. And it helps a lot in their economic development. And I think the Philippines should do the same thing. from a very economic perspective, no? On the other hand, the decision to exit the BRI because of the alleged aggressive actions of China in the contested waters of the South China Sea is a complex decision that requires careful analysis of the potential consequences that can have broader geopolitical implications. One possible backlash is it may potentially further strain relations between the two countries. The Philippines should consider how such a move might affect its relation with China and neighboring regional countries, which could possibly exacerbate the South China Sea dispute. Thus, the Philippines should weigh the potential diplomatic repercussion of such a decision. On the contrary, regarding geopolitical consideration, the Philippines' participation in the BRI can strengthen its ties with China. Maintaining a positive and pragmatic relationship with China is not only beneficial to the Philippines, economically speaking, it's because China is our largest trading partner still thus far, and an essential partner in many other fields, like example tourism and agriculture. In our tourism sector, medyo nagkakaroon tayo ng problema, ang baba ng ating Chinese tourists. And actually, we should attract more Chinese tourists kasi ang mga Chinese maraming pera. They can spend a lot of money in a touristic country, So it's revenue for us. We need to shift our mindset from too much of politics to more of economic. We should use economic lens. If we really want our country to be developed and more progressive, and for us to have more revenues that can finance our social social projects, like basic goods, basic services for our country, for our fellow men. So it's very important to think like this, no, or to change our mindset. And maintaining cordial and pragmatic relation with China in many ways can help the Philippines navigate complex geopolitical issues such as the territorial and maritime dispute in the South China Sea. Hence, in making such a crucial decision, the Philippines should assess its long-term geopolitical goals and consider how its stand on the BRI aligns with its interests in the disputed South China Sea and the broader regional context. While the territorial dispute, referring to the South China Sea and the heightening tension between China and the Philippines, is a significant factor, such a decision should prioritize the country's economic well-being, environmental sustainability, and strategic independence. I think I would emphasize on the strategic independence. I think the Philippines really has to strike a balance when you talk about its relation with major powers in the Asia-Pacific region, and that would include the United States, China, and even Russia, and even India. It has to have good relation with all these major powers. It would be beneficial to the Philippines. At the end of the day, it's really important for the Philippines to have an independent foreign policy, and also insulate itself from participating and being a pawn to all of these geopolitical games of these major powers. We're not a big power in the region. We're small. Now, if we want to be a critical and relevant power in the region in the long run, then we need to focus on our economy, because that's the only way, that's the only way for us to be relevant in major geopolitical, games or Game of Thrones in the Asia Pacific region and even beyond. And also balancing all the interests that I have said earlier is essential in making an informed decision, especially for this current administration. So far, that's my opening statement. And if in any case I will not be able to be with you after this, I'm sorry for that. I have other engagement and commitments that I have to attend to. But I would want to express my thanks to Kamentong, Kaado, and the other speaker, Mr. Butch, for gracing this media forum. And I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to our friends and also our to media friends. And I hope you can, make an article out of this, because this is a very important issue. Poverty is an important issue for our country. Thank you so much, and a pleasant morning to everyone. Thank you. Back to you, Daniel.
Thank you, Professor Ana Oy, for your wonderful presentation on how the BRI is a benefit for the Philippines and how it can be a great help for poverty alleviation. You mentioned that the BRI, unlike the European Union and other Western countries, do not have political conditionalities. If the Filipino people are wondering why the president is having a lot of reversals in his domestic and foreign policy, it is because the GSP, which is the annual trade deal with Europe, the EU Parliament has passed a resolution saying that they call on the Philippines to fulfill these political conditionalities. Number one, to free sa former Senator Laila de Lima to re-enter the ICC, to allow the ICC to investigate the drug war in the Philippines, and to abolish the Anti-Communist Task Force. These are the reasons why we need to listen to Professor Ana Malindog Uy's heed to the government, that we are able to do business with superpowers who are not going to bind economic development for our country to political conditionalities and their agenda. Thank you very much, Professor Ana Uy, again.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good day.
Right. Next, we will have Herman Camentong Laurel. He is the president of Asian Century Philippine Strategic Studies. He hosts a show on YouTube on Wednesday and Sundays on the YouTube channel Global Talk News Radio, which is also streamed on Facebook. And he is a geopolitical analyst, a nationalist, and a political commentator. Let us welcome Camentong for his opening statements.
Okay, magandang umaga po sa lahat, sa ating mga kasama dito at sa mga media na hindi po kontrolado ng oligarchy. At nakakatulong po sa ating magpaliwanag ng iba't ibang mga aspeto na napipigilan po sa mga malalaking media. At itong araw na to po, malalaman po ninyo kung bakit pinipigilan yung tulungan ng Pilipinas at China dito sa Belt and Road Initiative projects. May sakim na dahilan sa likod po nitong mga to. But let me start by also following through yung mga paliwanag na po ni kasamang Professor Ana Malindogoy. Ang Belt and Road Initiative. Bakit kailangan nawaan ng taong bayan po ang ating 120 milyong mga mamamayan itong bagay na to? Dahil ang Belt and Road Initiative po ay isang programa na itong nakaraang 10 taon po ay nakapaglunsad na po at nakabuo po ng 3,500 mga proyekto sa buong mundo. Lalo na sa mga bansa na bagong usbong at nagsisimula na masaganang progreso sa mga ekonomiya po nila. Tulad ng mga bansa sa Middle East, sa Latin America, lalo na sa Africa, of course, sa ASEAN. Kadadalo ko lang ng isang BRI forum sa Yunnan, sa Kunming, Yunnan, China. Kasama po, let's show the first image. Kasama ko po ang ilang mga kinatawan galing sa Pilipinas sa mga partido politikal at mga NGOs. Yung nasa kanan po ng mga nakaharap po sa screen ay si Raul Lambino, chairman po ng Association for Filipino-China Understanding. This is November 7 po kami dumating sa Kunming, Yunnan for a conference. Yung katabi po sa kaliwa ni ating Secretary Lambino ay si Minister Liu ng IDCPC, International Department ng Central ng Communist Party of China. Sa kanan po ni Minister Liu ay si Ron Monsayak, Executive Secretary po ni Coco Pimentel sa Senado bilang kinatawan ng PDP laban. Kanan po niya ay si Romel Banlawi, si Dr. Romel Banlawi, isa sa mga intellectual po natin at lagi pong naiimbita sa mga interview sa issue ng Philippine-China relations at diyan po sa South China Sea issues. And of course, yung sa kanan, ako po, si Ginoong Camentong Laurel. Ang pangalawang papakita ko po sa iyo ang ASEAN delegation po. Kami nag-posing sa harap po ng I forget the name of the lake doon sa Yunnan. Aming tour ng iba't ibang mga economic projects po sa Yunnan province. Now, ang susunod na image po will explain to you where the 3 major train projects of the China-funded overseas Official Development Assistance, ODA, na mga murang interest na loan or libre. At kung saan po pupunta yan at bakit prematurely inaanunsyo ang cancellation ng mga alagad po ni Bongbong Marcos sa gobyerno po niya. Dahil hindi po sa kanyang bibig lumalabas ang mga anunsyo na ititigil na, i-determinate itong mga ito, kundi doon sa mga nasa ibaba, which is one of the problems with the BBM administration. Ang susunod po will give you an insight into what they have been planning all this time. Mula sa pagtayo ng Maharlika Fund, talagang maraming nagtataka. Ano ba ang dahilan sa Maharlika Fund? Anong layunin yan? Bakit kailangan ng Maharlika Fund? Samantalang yan ay uhugot ng 75 billion pesos sa land bank at sa DBP at hindi pa natin alam kung ilang bilyong piso ang huhugutin mula sa Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. So, pondo po ng gobyerno, pondo po ng taxpayer ang ilalagay sa Maharlika Investment Fund. Samantalang po, sa buong mundo ngayon, walang investment environment. Nangangako sila ng mataas na tubo daw dito sa investment fund na to. Eh saan manggagaling yan? Yung pinakamalaking investment fund sa mundo, yung Norwegian Investment Fund, ay nagkakalugi-lugi. Itong mga nakaraang 2-3 taon, nagkalugi din ang Temasek, Singapore Investment Fund. Sino bang ganyang kabrilliant sa Pilipinas? Yang si BBM, ang makakaproduce ng investment fund na kikita ng malaki. Yung pala, ang gimmick po ni Bongbong Marcos at ng mga cronies niyang oligarchs, yung mga proyekto na mura government to government, ililipat sa Maharlika Investment Fund using our public funds, at kunwari kukuha ng investor sa ibang mga bansa. Pero yung pondo po na inilipat mula Land Bank, DBP at Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas ang gagamitin din para magtayo nitong mga train na to at iba. Kasi po, kasama po sa ngayong lumalabas na listahan na papasukan ng Maharlika Investment Fund, power, kuryente. Alam natin, yung power industry sa Pilipinas, ang pinakamayaman po sa buong ASEAN at sa buong mundo, pinakamalaking mga tubo. Dahil doon sa mga kontratang nung panahon ni Cory Aquino, yung privatization. So, itong image kita po ninyo, ngayon lang, the cat is out of the bag, sabi ko po nga sa aking summary dito. Huli na natin ang plano nila. Dilipat sa kamay ng mga oligarchs through the Maharlika Investment Fund using our public money to finance their projects na bibigyan ng BBM administration ng napakagandang mga kontrata. Tulad ng mga kontratang nakikita natin sa kuryente, infrastructure, tubig at iba pa sa kasalukuyang sistema po natin. So ito po si Congressman, party list ata, yes, Bicol Salok. Ryan Yamsuan, biglang naglabas ng brilliant idea, bakit hindi ilipat? Itap ang Maharlika Fund for the Bicol Express. Huli na natin ang kanilang scheme. So, nung nakaraang taon lang po, ito nung simula po ng mga negotiations sa China, ang Inquirer, for example, nagulat po nito, so kung hindi makakita yung 140 billion peso loans from China for infrastructure project. Kung these, of course, are the 3 train projects. And doon sa Maharlika Fund, meron na silang 70 or 75 billion from Land Bank of PVP. Hindi pa natin alam kung magkano huhugutin nila sa Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Basta, swindle ito ng oligarchs sa taong bayan na naman. Yan. Next image is Land Bank, DBP remit 75 billion contribution Maharlika Fund. Bakit pa ililipat sa iba? Samantalang nasa kamay na po ng publiko yan. Kung gustong i-invest yan sa train project, edi invest din sa train project, pero gobyerno. Pero wala akong tutubuin ang oligarchs po niya nakasabot po ng BBM administration. Kaya kailangan ilabas po public institution at ilagay sa private. Ito po ang ehemplo ng mga kontrata ng privatized services. Next one. Itong Nobyembre lang, 20, ulat na naman na lumabas. San Miguel Corporation, South Luzon Expressway profit up 21%. 3 billion peso. Hindi po ito dating tubo. Ang dating tubo ay mga 2.6, 2.5 billion. Lumaki ang tubo to 3 billion this time. Every 2, 3 years, tumataas ang tubo. Samantalang tayo, ang ating ekonomiya, ang ating mga kabuhayan, pahirap ng pahirap. Yan po ang kahulugan po ng mga concession contracts, service contracts na nakukuha po ng mga oligarch dito sa mga kontrata, privatized na mga operation. Kaya po hindi nakakagulat ang kanilang inappoint ni BBM dito sa Maharlika Investment Fund. Ngayon, presidente ng Maharlika Investment Fund, sino? Si Aboitiz Executive, Rason Executive, ICTSI Executive, Consing. Anong first name ni Consing? Buka. Fire Consing. No. Tapos nawala yung binuksan mo. Anyway, tuloy mo lang. So, nakita natin, piece by piece, nako-connect na natin po lahat ng mga operation po nitong mga oligarchs with the BBM administration at paano ginagamit po public funds po sa kanilang mga mapagsamantalang mga kontrata. Okay, and the next one, actually, walang katotohanan na mas mahal ang Chinese loans. Paulit-ulit na po pinapaliwanag niya ng Department of Finance ng panahon ni Duterte. Pero napakalakas po ang operation ng mga oligarchs na disinformation sa publiko para you have to try to. So, this one is 2019. China loans at par with Japan and Korea, Department of Finance. No? Ayos ko po lang yung aking suggest. And so, paulit-ulit po. China loans at par with Japan and Korea. Tutuloy po natin ang ating mga ebidensya. So, ang susunod po, tapos na to. No? Let's move on to the next one. Paulit-ulit, paninira po sa China loans. No? Sabi nila noon, ay may collateral yan, mga lupa, sasanla. Parang katotohanan po yan. Department of Finance again have to explain there is no collateral for China loans. Paulit-ulit yan po. Pero dahil mga malalaking media po ay kontrolado ng oligarchs or ng Amerikano, Inquirer, talagang kontrolado po, hindi naman Pangilinan yan, nakasabot po ng Amerikano, diretsahan po tayo. Total, hindi naman kami ilalabas. This is the truth. Bakit Pangilinan? Si Pangilinan may control ng kuryente, tubig, kung ano-ano, infrastructure, tollways, and so on. Concentrating, paano napapasok ang Amerikano dyan? Sa likod po ng Salim Group ay operations ng American Financial Mafia. As far as 2018 pa po, this is the next one. The Department of Transportation hopes to keep China as a funder for 3 railways, Luzon and Mindanao, and of course the Bicol Express revival. It doubts whether Japan can finance additional infrastructure due to its exposure big-ticket projects. They never really thought of getting financing from Japan. Sa atin kukuha itong mga oligarchs ng pondo sa Maharlika Investment Fund. Kasi wala ng pondo. Japan, I will show you in the next one, Japan's economy has contracted the past month. No? At ito ay lumabas sa ulat ng Reuters sa November 15. Japan's economy contracts. Negative 2% po ang Japan noong Oktubre. Negative pa yan po for the coming months and it will be declared in recession very soon. Hindi makakatulong ng Japan. Sinong niloloko nila? Well, marami silang naloloko dahil hindi po ito inuulat ang bayan. Anong impact sa Pilipinas po niyan? Kaya po ang pamagat ko po ay it will be a disaster if we don't resume the BRI project in the Philippines. Sabi ng si Gunigundo po itong ex-BSP official. Sabi niya, diverting public funds to Maharlika means higher taxes and more loans. Uutang ang land bank. Uutang ang DBP para ipuno po doon sa 75 billion pesos na hinugot sa kanila para maipasok sa Maharlika Investment Fund. Again, the next picture will show you itong mga oligarchs, tuloy-tuloy lang, automatic every 2-3 years, built-in sa kontrata nila, tataas ang tubo. Tulad nitong July 22, 2022 report, numeral ko, first half for net growth. Profit grows again. Hindi lang profit, kundi yung profit nila lumalaki. At every 2-3 years, ganyan yan po yan. Paulit-ulit po yan. So that is the first part of my presentation. No? So the MIF, the Maharlika Investment Fund, oligarchs grab the train projects, but hindi lang po train projects and more projects, power and so on. But part of this issue also is yung connection ng Pilipinas at ang Amerika. No? And nung nag-meeting po si si President Xi and President Biden ng Estados Unidos itong nakaraan, nagkaroon ng pagluluwag po sa policy level yung relasyon ng Pilipinas at China dapat. Kaya po nagulat po tayo itong nakaraang mga araw lang po na nag-issue ang National Security Council ng Media Advisory. At sabi po dito, members of the media are hereby advised that the National Security Council did not issue any press release today or in the past few days that is the basis for the stories below. ABS-CBN, mamaya pupuntahan po natin. Next one, no? So, anunsyo ng National Security Council na may lumabas na fake news na hindi po galing sa kanila at kanilang dinidisclaim. Ano yung fake news na yan? Unang-una yung banta ng National Security Council daw na ibaban ang TikTok. Ano? Both ABS-CBN at Philippine Star nag-report po nito. Both owned by oligarchs. Ano? And pangalawa po ang importanteng advisory o ulit na National Security Council press release from Jonathan Malaya's office also. Although makikita po ninyo yung kabaliktaran na pinagsasabi ni Jonathan Malaya. Before this, the National Security Council does not support the planned Christmas convoy to the BRI Sierra Madre in Ayungin Shoal. Di ba meron silang ino-organize? I have the latest intelligence to report to you on that. At the next image po, yung sinabi po ni Malaya noong November 10, 2 weeks ago, TikTok ban possible if linked to cyber espionage, probe to be finished next month. Kalalabas ng National Security Council ngayon, walang katotohanan yung TikTok ban. Next image po, so I save more time, I'll move forward. Ito po yung pamaskong handog. So ito po yung proyekto na o-organize ang Akbayan Group. Dito po ni Risa Hontiveros ng mga bangka, mga fishermen, fisherfolk, kung sino-sino mga civilian, and syempre kasama ang mainstream media dyan. At actually, nagbigay ako ng warning na baka dito gagawa ng false flag ng Amerikano para may malubog po na barko o bangka. Para issue na naman laban sa China. So alam naman nila haharangin sila ng China because China is exercising its sovereignty over the Ayungin Shoal. Kaya po yung memo ng National Security Council sinasabi, huwag kayo pumunta sa Ayungin Shoal, huwag kayo pumunta sa BRI Sierra Madre. Sabi po, nagbibigay ng warning, pero last night we received word na itutuloy po ang group with the following groups. May listahan po ng mga grupos po silang pinadala sa akin. I'll just see anyway, hindi ko po titingnan na muna yung lahat ng mga grupo. No? Pero mapapansin po ninyo, may series of billboards na lumabas. Yung billboard ni Secretary Teodoro na yung sabi, atin ito. Isa Contiveros naglabas ng billboard. Pero lahat sila po, hindi sinasabi po, hindi sila ang nagpupondo. Hindi nila alam kung sino nagpupondo. Pati itong pamaskong handog, sino nagpupondo niyan? We call for an investigation of the funding of these operations. Pacquiao, meron ding billboard. Ano? Itong mga operations na to, million po itong isang kada billboard na to. Million po yan. Why has the mainstream press why have they never asked the question, sino nagpupondo nito? Kasi tinanggihan po ni Gibo Chidoro na siya ang nagpupondo. Sinabi niya, hindi niya alam. Nung simula, sinabi niya, hindi niya alam kung sino nagpupondo. Later on, sabi niya, may isang Filipino-Chinese nagpupondo. Hindi niya binigay ang pangalan. Anong tinatago nila? Ang totoo po, last night, I got a call from the United States of America. Dumating na daw po yung $5 million na pondo ng Amerikano para sa handog operation na to. Ano? Because they are projecting around 40 boats, bangkas, ships, and so on na iikot, pupuntang Ayungin. I don't know kung itutuloy pa nila yung pagtungo sa Ayungin with the National Security Council warning. Ano? Pero hindi po biro yung gastos po sa apat na pong mga bangka, barko at anumang i-organize nila, pagkain, fuel, and so on. Kaya po we are not saying we have evidence because of course sa mga kanyang operation walang evidence, but we are calling for an investigation of these operations of these destabilizers of Philippine-China relations. So yan, itong evidence ng mga fake information, inilalabas po ng malalaking media without verifying first. Ano? TikTok probe for compliance with constitutional ban on foreign ownership. Unang-una, hindi po ito local operations. This is an international operations. I don't know how in Philippine constitutional ban on foreign ownership will apply here. No? But anyway, nilabas nila. Later on, we withdraw. Hindi na nyo makikita ito sa internet, no? At saka nawala na naman ako. Sorry. Yan, National Security Council, Malaya, Handog. TikTok probe, ano? Next one is ABS-CBN. National Security Council probes TikTok on security threat, which has been withdrawn already. Now, all this disinformation of the mainstream media ay nagre-resulta po ng malaking kaguluhan, ng malaking negative consequences para sa ekonomiya po natin. Kanina nabanggit ni Ana Malindokoy, walang turista na pong dumarating po galing sa China sa Pilipinas, maybe a few 100,000. Samantalang noong 2019, that was 2 million Chinese tourists arrived in the Philippines, bringing, I think, 2 billion, I forget exactly how much, but sa bilyong dolyares po sa ating ekonomiya. Wala po ngayon yun. Imagine po ninyo, ano ang nawala po sa bulsa ng mga maliliit na mga manggagawa sa tourism industry natin. Ano? Now, finally, just in yesterday, and then nung bumisita si PBBM sa Estados Unidos, the Philippines and the United States signed the landmark 123 agreement on civil nuclear cooperation on the sidelines of the APEC summit. Bakit nila pinangalang 123? Yung ba alam nila yung 123 sa Tagalog o sa Pilipino ay ibig sabihin swindle? Ano? Kasi po, ang teknolohiya ng Estados Unidos sa nuclear technology ay antiquated na, luma na. Wala silang bagong development po dyan. And so, itong nababasa po natin, in fact, there's a press conference right now sa isang forum, tinutulak po itong nuclear project ni Marco Juanco. But what is the truth? American nuclear power technology is behind the times. Ito po from CNBC, how China became the king of nuclear power and how the US is trying to stage a comeback. Bumabawi pa lang ang Estados Unidos. Pero nais po ipilit at ibenta po at ipapasok din yan sa MIF, Maharlika Investment Fund, itong nuclear power project if we do not stop this swindle of our country. As far back as 2014, itong aking ipapakita po, kami ni dating the late Roger Posadas, one of the few nuclear physicists ng Pilipinas and physics scientist ng Pilipinas, pinag-iusapan na namin yung thorium energy. Kasi po ang Pilipinas may sariling deposit ng thorium which is safer than using uranium. And China already has an operating thorium nuclear reactor that burns thorium. Yan ang headline po sa next one. Yan po. A fuel that could power the country United States for 20,000 years. We have thorium in Palawan. Nobody's talking about this because this is not American technology. This is China and India ang mga nangunguna po sa thorium development ngayon. We should be focusing on this. At hindi po yung ngayon kumakapit na kaagad sa American nuclear power technology na atrasado na po sa development. So that is my presentation. I think I skipped to 20 minutes. That's good. Maraming salamat po. Maybe later on we'll respond to questions. I think ngayon si Ado is Ado.
Thank you, Kamentong, for your presentation on on exposing the swindle of the Maharlika Investment Fund and giving us this information on thorium energy and how it could be very beneficial for the Philippines energy sector. Next, I'd like to welcome Ado Paglinawan. He's the Vice President for Internal Affairs, Philippines Strategic Studies. Let us welcome Ado for his opening remarks and his presentation, People's War versus Poverty.
Good morning to all of you. While Xi Jinping and Joe Biden were repairing fractured relations in the APEC summit in San Francisco, EFA Undersecretary Maria Teresita Daza lectured China. We call on China to remove all these illegal structures, cease reclamation in the South China Sea, and be accountable for the damage caused by these illegal activities. We would like to play the video for your appreciation so that you will know where I am coming from. Let us play the video of Inquirer today.
Refusing to bow down to China's demands, the Philippines instead asks Beijing to remove its illegal structures in the West Philippine Sea. In a statement, DFA spokesperson Teresita Daza says the country calls on China to remove all illegal structures and cease its reclamations in the West Philippine Sea. She also says China should be accountable for the damages caused by these illegal activities pertaining to China's structures in Panganiban Reef, internationally known as Mischief Reef. Daza notes that Panganiban Reef is now a militarized artificial island due to China's actions. Despite China's aggression, Daza maintains that Ayungin Shoal is within the exclusive economic zone and continental shelf of the Philippines. She adds that the Philippines will not resupply missions to Ayungin Shoal, reiterating the legitimacy of such operations within our territory. Following China's November 10 aggression in Philippine waters, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin urged Manila to immediately stop making maritime provocations and tow away BRP Sierra Madre stationed in Ayungin Shoal. But Daza says the BRP Sierra Madre serves as a constant Philippine government presence in response to China's illegal occupation in 1995 of Panganiban Reef.
Well, this is how our foreign policy has clearly deteriorated into a zero-sum lawfare. Dinidefine ko po ang lawfare as a legal warfare, which aims to win the strategic narrative through deliberate misinterpretation of existing laws. The key to lawfare is to find gaps and ambiguities in the law in order to attack and turn these points into one's advantage. To be able to enter the lawfare game, the Philippines filed an arbitration case against China in 2013. All right? But again, they were in search, in filing for this arbitration, they were in search of what we know as the usual rules-based factor that the United States uses in its information warfare and propaganda. Gagawa sila ng isang panuntunan at i-claim nila na yung panuntunan na yan ang batas. And this is what happened 2001 when the United States attacked Iraq. What was the rule-based order? That Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, which up to now has not been proved because it is not true. But for the meantime, they had already bombarded Iraq so much, invaded its territory with boots on the ground, stole the oil and gas of Iraq, and fed its own economy with the profits that came from the exercise. That is what rule-based is all about. In this case, the rule-based is to come up with a single handle for which to base the position of China, to render as invalid the position of China. However, this is what DASA said. In accordance with UNCLOS. According to UNCLOS, yes. But she continued, and the final and binding 2016 award in the South China Sea arbitration. Wrong. The 2016 arbitral award is not binding on China. And it applies only to the Philippines because we were the only participating party. Mga kabansa, pauulit-ulitin namin yan dito hanggat hindi yan naiuukit sa inyong mga noo. Bakit? Kapagkat yan ay isang kabalintunan. Yan ba ay inuulit ko ang posisyon ng China? Hindi po. Ito po ang base ko sa posisyon na yan, ang statement ni Ambassador Rosario Manalo, na an undisputed cornerstone of our foreign policy when it comes to international law. Let us hear Ambassador Rosario Manalo.
I hope I am not branded as a traitor to the country. But if you study very carefully international law, an arbitration was not set up correctly when we claim our right to the Kalayaan Group of Islands. I was breaking my brains trying to find out from international law books authorities what is an arbitration tribunal. And everywhere, an arbitration tribunal calls for three parties. The two who are claiming whatever they're claiming, and between the two, the selection of an umpire. And when arbitration is carried out, it is always voluntary. Under the UN Charter, it is always voluntary. However, in the UNCLOS, there was a provision or an attachment or something that made arbitration as a mechanism for solving compulsory under the UNCLOS. But the Philippines, when we ratified and approved the UNCLOS, we opted out of that provision, which means hindi natin gagamitin yung compulsory arbitration. We didn't want it. All right. Without even us talking with the Chinese or wherever, equally the same, the Chinese opted out of that provision. So, both the Philippines and China cannot invoke compulsory arbitration under the UNCLOS because we both opted out. So, what is the remedy? Dalhin natin sa UN. Under the UN Charter, which is voluntary arbitration. Philippines wanted it. Ayaw ng China. Voluntary. They say, you cannot tell China, "Hoy, you have to do it." Because, no, it's voluntary. So what did we do? We went and proceeded to set up an arbitration panel. That is not even an arbitration panel. That's just a Philippine panel handpicking the people who will render the very issue that we want at binabayaran yun ng panahon nila. Ikaw ba naman kung babayaran ka at andun ka, hindi ba bibigay mo yung favorable position? That is why China is questioning. Now, I'm not trying, please understand, I'm not trying to be traitor to my country. I love my country. Pero hindi tama. Sino may sulsul nyo? Kayo nang draw the conclusion, ano? However, the very fact that that decision was given, it has brought to the attention of the world that we have a basis to do some claiming on the South China Sea of the KGI. Pero it does not bind anybody. It's just a position taken by the Philippines, and with the arguments we're giving, ito importante at bakit importante sa atin sa Pilipinas. But that's to me an opinion of a plus for us. But it does not bind China nor anybody else in the world. Ngayon, kung magkakaroon tayo ng new process of settling the issue, we will. Kaya, in this point, tama si Presidente Duterte. Tabi muna yan, at the proper time, ilalabas natin. I hope I'm not.
Klaro po ang statement. The arbitration was not binding. Bakit? Isa lang ho ang naglaro sa korte. Oh? May umpire, may basketball team yung kabila, pero hindi naman nagsabi na sasali yung kabila, pinipilit nilang isali. Bakit ho importante sa arbitration na dalawa ang partido at least to be binding? Kasi po yung dalawang partido na yon ang magtatalo. Ang mga hurado, yung dalawang partido na yon ang magnonombra. Yung dalawang partido ang gagastos. At yung dalawang partido na yon, dahil sumali sila, mag-agree that they will abide by the rule of the umpire. And lastly, if that is so, yung dalawang partido na yon ang mag-i-enforce ng desisyon ng arbitration. Dahil even if this were called purportedly under the UN guidelines on voluntary arbitration, hindi po sinunod ng Pilipinas ang protocol. Kaya wala ring katotohanan that this is UN backed, UN sanctioned, or UN officiated, and in fact, the spokesperson of Ban Ki-moon, Stefan Dujarric, said that the United Nations has nothing to do with this arbitration and does not comment on any part or merits involved in the discussion. So itong konklusyon ni DASA that China cannot therefore lawfully exercise sovereignty over it is horsepaki. Ebak po ng kabayo. Ang UNCLOS po is just one treaty under the entire body of international law, and it was only adopted, note the date, 1982, and made effective in 1994. No? Besides, what is on the ground? Customary law. Customary law is the final arbiter of sovereignty. What does customary law say? Actual occupation and effective control of the area. China is presently doing that. They are in possession of the area. Lastly, for this slide, yung ating pong sovereign rights according to UNCLOS, which is merely to take benefit of the economic potential of what is under the water, cannot supersede ang pag-aari, ang soberanya, at ang territoriality ng isang bansa. The essentiality of participation in voluntary arbitration is very clear in Article 637, Article 297 of the UNCLOS. Any such decision shall have no binding force except between the parties and in respect of that particular dispute. Eh ngayon ho, sinasabi nila that they already have international acceptance. Wala hong provecho ang international acceptance dito. Because if it's not binding, what good is it to be recognized? And by the way, there are only 25 states so far that is backing up this arbitral ruling. Bakit po? Ang centrality po ng international agreements under international law is based on state consent. Hindi mo pwedeng obligahin, hindi mo pwedeng puwersahin ang isang nasyon kung siya ang may hawak ng soberanya. Next slide, please. We are being asked to give prior notification each time we conduct a resupply mission to Ayungin Shoal. We will not do so Ayan po ang posisyon ng Pilipinas. Anong sinasabi ng arbitral ruling na pinagmamalaki nila sa buong mundo na binding? The root of the disputes presented by the Philippines in this arbitration lies in fundamentally different understanding of their respective rights under the convention in the waters of the South China Seas. So, anong ibig sabihin? We will not do so? Tama ba yung attitude na yan? We will not do so means we will not cooperate. Di po ba? Anong sabi ng arbitral ruling? In such circumstances, the purpose of dispute resolution is to clarify the parties' respective rights and obligations and thereby to facilitate their future relations in accordance with the general obligations of good faith that both governments unequivocally recognize. That both governments, not one. So when DASA says, we will not do so, the Philippines is acting in bad faith. The Philippines is denying the existence of a conflict and it is acting in bad faith. Next slide, please. DASA says, China bases its expansive claim in the South China Seas on the so-called 9-dash line shown on an old Chinese map. Anong sabi ng arbitral ruling na pinagmamalaki nila? China's claim on sovereignty in the South China Sea is not based on the 9-dash line. Paragraph 272 ruling on China's historic rights. Doon na lang ako didiretso dito. In particular, the tribunal emphasizes that nothing in this award should be understood to comment in any way on China's historic claim to the islands of the South China Sea. That nothing in this award should be understood to comment in any way. Na-invalidate ba? Walang comment eh. Ito pa, sabi ni DASA, as clearly stated. Pero anong sinasabi ng arbitral? As clearly stated, you UNCLOS superseded any historic rights or other sovereign rights or jurisdiction in excess of the limits imposed by UNCLOS. Ano sabi ng arbitral ruling? Nor does the tribunal's decision that a claim on historic right to living and non-living resources is not compatible with the convention limit China's ability to claim maritime zones in accordance with the convention on the basis of such islands. Yan ho ang pandurugas, pambumudol-budol. Huh? Ang ginagawa nila sa sambayan ng Pilipino. So, tanong ko, finally, next slide please. Ano ba talaga gusto natin? Conflict or resolution? Ito ho, ang non-zero sum is a win-win. Kasi sa zero sum, my interest, I win. Your interest, you lose. Pero pag nag-usap, sabi ko nga, ang posisyon ng Pilipinas, rightly or wrongly, sovereign rights, no? ang posisyon ng China, sovereignty. Hindi ho magkikita yan eh. Pero kung paghaharapin natin na yung nasa taas ay bababa at yung nasa ibaba ay tataas at mag-uusap. At mga kabansa, hindi lamang mag-uusap dahil nag-usap na nung panahon ni Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo, nag-usap pa uli nung panahon ni Duterte. Pero nung panahon ni Aquino at ngayon, hindi nag-uusap. Yan ang problema. Yan ang nagdi-destabilize sa sitwasyon. Gulo. At sa pag-amin ni Presidente Bongbong Marcos sa Hawaii, ang prioridad niya ay itong nangyayari sa South China Sea. Next slide. Sinasabi ni Ambassador Rigoberto Tiglao sa kanya, it's not too late to change your mind against China, Mr. President. Dahil 7% lamang ang nagsasabi na prioridad, yung prioridad mo. 7% lamang ng mga Pilipino ang nagsasabi. Kaya ang katarantaduhang ginagawa mo defending the integrity of Philippine territory against foreigners. Yung realidad mo. Yung virtual reality mo. Yung lutang na ideya mo. Ay 7% lamang ng most urgent human concern ngayon ng Pilipinas. In contrast, the concerns is 74% over controlling inflation, which is economic, and 49% over increasing workers' pay, which is again economic. So nasaan? Nasaan? Hindi na ho kung pupunta sa mga detalye, sa mga diniscuss ng ating Pangulo. Babalikan ko lang ho si Ana Malindugoy na para masolusyonan yung inflation na yan, para ano ang importante para magkaroon yan? Umikot ang pera. Dahil ang pera po ng bayan ngayon nandito lang sa Meralco, nandito lamang kay Pangilinan, nandito lamang kay San Miguel Corporation, nandito lamang kay Aboitiz, nandito lamang kay Enrique Rason. Eh yan din ho, magpa-partner sa Maharlika Investment Fund. At from G to G, government to government, gagawin nilang B2B. Ang lahat ng ating infrastruktura, ibig sabihin, ipa-privatize nila. Sila ang gagastos, sila kikita sa kontrata, at sila ang mag-aari, hindi taong bayan. Yan ho, ang Christmas cake, Thanksgiving cake, na binibigay sa atin ng present government. Kaya kayo, bayan, ang magdesisyon kung gusto nyo pa ng ganitong lukuhan. Kung hindi nyo pa nararamdaman ang taas ng kuryente, ewan ko, kurot-kurutin ninyo ang inyong pisngi. Ang problema po ng sambayan ng Pilipino ngayon ay kung saan kukuha ng susunod na kakanin ng kanilang mga pamilya, kung saan kukuha ng pambayad sa kuryente, kung saan kukuha ng panggastos para sa matrikula, pabasahin ng mga anak, at kung saan kukuha bukas para makapasok sa trabaho ang bawat isa. Wala ho dito sa prioridad ni Bobo Marcos. Salamat po.
All right, thank you, Kado, for this very important expose. Thank you for being truthful and bold in telling the truth about the South China Sea dispute. Just a little reminder that the President Marcos Jr. issued a statement when he was at APEC where he reiterated the DFA DAZA's statement on the so-called final and binding 2016 arbitration. We'd like to remind the president of his own words during the campaign. He himself acknowledged that the 2016 arbitration is, quote, not an option because it binds only one party. Now I'd like to welcome Mr. RJ Javeliano to give a short presentation on the on basic needs and public utilities. Morning.
Magandang umaga po. Ako po si RJ Javeliana Jr., po ang tagapangulo ng United Filipino Consumers and Commuters. Ganon din po ng Water for All refund movement. May mga ilang mahalagang paksa po tayo na gustong i-raise. Pero bago po yan, gusto ko lang pong dugtungan ang mga binanggit na mga unang nagsalita rito mula kay Professor Camentong at ganon din siyempre kay Kabansa Ado. No? Ukol doon sa, particular doon sa Maharlika Fund. Ano po? Huwag po tayo magtaka kung bakit ganon ang kilos at direksyon ng gobyernong ito. Sapagkat mahigit po sa 30 tagapayo mula po sa isang pribadong grupo na nagpapay sa ating presidente. Doon po sa 30 na ito, 10 dito ang mga bilyonaryo na makikita po sa Forbes magazine na halos trillion po yung kanilang combined assets, trilyong piso. At ang tumatayo po na dito sa Private Development Council Advisory Council ng presidente, ang hinirang po na chairman dyan ay isang aboitis. Dudugtong ko lang yung binanggit ni Camentong at Ticado. Yung aboitis po, siya rin ang tumatayo na hepe ng Maharlika Fund. So ibig sabihin, yung Sarsuela at Moro-Moro, pagdating po dito sa usapin ng Maharlika, ay matagal na pong pinagplanuhan ito. At ngayon lang tayo, dahil lumalabas, ay dahan-dahan na lumilinaw ang buong katotohanan. Kung ang tagapayo ng presidente ay mula po sa sektor ng mga oligarkong individual, ano ang ating i-expect? 6 po yung pangunahing lugar o paksa na focus nitong grupo na ito, itong advisory council na ito sa presidente. Unang-una dyan ang infrastructure. Ano po? Ayan. Kaya huwag tayo magtaka na ang relasyon ng Maharlika Fund at itong relasyon ng council na ito ay pinangunahan ng isang aboitis. So alam na po natin ang dulo nito, kung saan po ito patungo. At malinaw na hanggang ngayon ay tayo ay hostage. Tayong publiko ay hostage sa pang-araw-araw. Ano po? Hindi hostage ng China, kundi tayo ay hostage ng mga oligarkong individual na nagdidikta sa direksyon ng ating ekonomiya. Unang-una na po dyan ang usapin ng kuryente. Ano po? Hindi lang po sa usapin ng Meralco, kung hindi, kahit pumunta po kayo sa Pagadian City, napakataas po ng presyo ng kuryente. Pumunta po kayo sa Tagum City, sa Davao del Sur, abot ng mga 17 to 19 per kilowatt hour. Pumunta po kayo ng Leyte ay ganun din. At bukod po dyan, minsan 3 hanggang 4 na beses ang nawawala o napuputol ang serbisyo ng kuryente. So hindi lang po sa usapin ng Meralco, bagamat ang Meralco ay napakalaki ng kanyang control pagdating po sa mga power consumers. Ano po? At wag sanang malingat ang publiko na ang prangkisa ng Meralco ay dapat po goodbye na sa darating na June 2028. Pero nagtataka po ang UFCC, bakit may mga ilang mga kongresista na imbis na palayasin, paalisin, at panagutin ang Meralco, ay ang gusto pa nila ay hatiin sa 3 lugar o 3 prangkisa yung nasasakupan ng Meralco. Hindi kaya ito isang patibong? Hindi kaya Meralco rin ang makakakuha ng 2 pang prangkisa na ito na kunyari ay tatanggalin sa monopolyo ng Meralco, pero ang real intention hindi para i-democratize ang energy sector, kundi lalong bigyan ng insentibo dahil bababa yung tinatawag na buwis na binabayaran ng Meralco. Kumahati ito sa 3. Paano kung kumpanya pa rin ng Meralco, ibang pangalan lamang ang papasok? So yan ang dapat nating tignan. So again, ang posisyon ng United Filipino Consumers and Commuters, dapat putulin na ang prangkisa ng Meralco, wag sa June 2028, dapat ngayon na mismo at dapat ibalik sa pamamagitan ng ERC ang mga kasalanan ng Meralco sa ating mga power consumers at ganun din po sa buong bansa. Tulad yan sa Tagum City, Pagadian City, kahit po dyan sa lugar ng Tacloban, ay napakamahal po ng mga singil sa kuryente. Yan po yung unang usapin pagdating po sa kontrol ng oligarkiya sa enerhiya mula sa generation, oligarko ang nariyan. Mula po sa transmission, oligarko pa rin ang nariyan. At ikatlo ay yun po sa distribution. Ngayon po, ito po yung isang napakalaking problema na kinakaharap ng Metro Manila. Ang panibagong kapal ng mukha ng mga oligarko, kabibigay lang nitong Mayo 2023 ng 10 taon na pinirmahan ng gobyernong ito na dagdag na prangkisa para kay Maynilad at Manila Water. Mayo, Agis 2023, ngayon po ay buwan ng Nobyembre, kayo nang bumilang, ilang buwan pa lamang ang nakakaraan. Pero ano ang gusto ng Maynilad at Manila Water? Ang gusto nila, yung ibinigay sa kanilang 10 taon, 2023 hanggang 2037, ay dagdagan na agad ng 2037 hanggang 2047. Ang kapal talaga ng muka. Bakit? Ang suspecha po namin dito, natatakot sila. Baka anytime pwede magpalit ng gobyerno at isang bagong Duterte na ang manungkulan tulad ng ginawa ng tatay, minura-mura. Itong mga oligarko na ito, hindi pinirmahan yung naglaps na kontrata na 1997 hanggang 2022 nung nakaraang gobyerno at itong gobyerno na ito nagbigay ng 2023 hanggang 2037 na bonus na 10 taon at ngayon sa December 4 si Maynilad ay ipapatawag sa pamamagitan ng isang peking public consultation ang mga water consumers para hingin yung 2037 to 2047, no? Kaya tiyak po nakukulo na naman ang reaksyon ng mga consumers dito. Sa usapin na ito. Kaya ang panawagan po ng Water for All Refund Movement at ng UFCC ay ayaw na po natin ng extension. Tama na po yung sarsuela. Ang tubig ay buhay, subalit ang presyo ng mga oligarkong kumpanya ay nakamamatay. Ayan po, no? So, dalawang twin po yan. At siguro very short na lang po, meron tayong struggle din na ginagawa sa ilang mga probinsya patungkol din po sa environment. Ito po yung isang usapin na kung saan ay ang ating mga consumers at ang ating mga kasama ay namumblema dahil ito'y kontrolado rin po. Ito'y sa Zamboanga del Sur, ito po'y isang issue ng matinding quarrying na kontrolado ng iisang pamilya ng halos 50 taon. No? So ang UFCC po at ibang organisasyon ay nakatutok po sa maraming issue ng tubig, ng kalikasan at ng kuryente. Maraming salamat po Kamentong at Kado sa inyong pagpapaunlak sa UFCC. Salamat po.
Thank you to Sir RJ Javeliana and the United Filipino Consumers and Commuters for your call. We also support this heed that we do not, that Meralco's franchise come 2028 must be suspended, and in and it is obscene that Meralco and these oligarchs are making a profit while the people in the nation are suffering. It's time, if we truly had someone with political will, to restore these public utilities, to nationalize them and give the ownership back to the state. And ultimately, the consumers are the ones that control the public utilities and the basic needs. Next, I'd like to welcome Mr. All right. All right. So our next speaker will be Mr. Romeo Butch Unina. He's a former press undersecretary who will be giving the keynote or the highlight presentation this morning entitled Predatory Meralco. Let us wait for a few minutes before he starts his presentation. Oh yeah. Yeah, a while ago. What we have here is what Kado mentioned. That is the spokesperson, UN spokesperson for Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, then Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, Stefan Dugarric. He was asked about the 2016 arbitral award, and this is what he had to say. He said the United Nations, quote, doesn't have a position on the legal and procedural merits of the case or on the disputed claims. So it is therefore inaccurate to say that the 2016 arbitration is in any way binding on parties or UN backed or would form the basis, now form the basis of this new so-called rules-based international order. Okay.
Hinihintay po natin, nasa room na po si Ginoong Butchunia, pero yung connection po, hinihintay po natin. Joshua, nasa na? Wala pa?
Kamentong.
Okay.
Kamentong, good morning.
I don't hear. Yeah, Butch, good morning.
I don't seem to have a video. Wait, I just opened my video.
Yeah, just wait a while when you were adjusting. Can you see me now? Can you see
Yeah,
us now?
I can see you, but I don't see myself on the screen. So I suppose there's an icon that I have to open or hit or. But you can hear me, right?
We can hear you loud and clear. Beside me, to my right is Danny Long.
We can see you.
Hi, Danny. Danny, hi.
Danny Long will be the moderator. I'll pass it on to Danny.
Sir Romeo, we can see you already. We can see you.
It's Butch, please.
Yeah. Butch, we can see you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Welcome again, Mr. Romeo Butch Hunia, former press undersecretary. He will give us his presentation on the predatory nature of Meralco. Let's welcome Mr. Butch for his opening statements.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Kamentong, for this opportunity again to be able to bring to our publics the various issues that we've been addressing for the last 10, 15 years in different platforms and different media. Unfortunately, the issues have not changed much since then, and the interest of the public has hardly been protected or eased up or alleviated. But for now, it is encouraging, Kamentong and Dan, that in the last hearing of the House Committee on Franchises, at least some of the basic issues that had been left under the rug for a few years back had been put out front and raised, although they were not addressed by the ERC resource persons and the Meralco resource persons that were in the meeting. I'm referring to the performance-based rating methodology, the PBR, that was taken up to some extent in that meeting. Alam niyo po, ang PBR, ang mekanismo ngayon or methodology ngayon sa pag-determine ng rate na binabayaran natin sa Meralco, particular yung distribution, supply, and metering charge. Ito po ay binago mula sa return on rate base noong 2007, but the process started as early as 2003 kung saan nag-migrate tayo from return on rate base to performance-based regulation. Dito po sa PBR, it's a series of steps or stages na gagawin dapat ng Energy Regulatory Commission para ma-set nila yung distribution, supply, and metering charge ng Meralco, kung saan ang Meralco ay makakakuha o ng kanilang reasonable na return sa kanilang investment. At ang mga consumers naman, na katulad natin, ay magkakaroon ng fair opportunity para matuntunan natin at ma-question natin kung ano yung proseso na yan. Ang isang magandang lumabas sa House hearing this week ay napag-usapan ng to some extent yung weighted average cost of capital na ginagamit ng Meralco para makakuha sila ng return on capital na noong third regulatory period ay umabot sa 129 billion pesos. Ang weighted average cost of capital na 14.79%, ina-apply yan sa regulatory asset base. Yung regulatory asset base naman, na ito yung mga kawan at lahat ng mga facilities ng Meralco na ginagamit sa pag-supply sa atin, depende sa appraisal, yun ang kalalabasan kung magkano ang return on capital na magiging basihan ng mga kita at dividendo ng Meralco. Sa kasalukuyan po, ang regulatory asset base ng Meralco ay nasa around 130 billion pesos. Pero doon po sa hearing, may ipinakita si Congressman Fernandez ng Laguna na isang table kung saan lumalabas na ang historical cost ng ang historical value ng assets ng Meralco was only 96 billion pesos. So kung imaginein po ninyo, between 130 billion and 96 billion, ang difference na 34 billion, i-impute mo yung 14.79% na weighted average cost of capital, ganun po kahalaga na kailangan periodically or regularly as mandated by law, yun ay riribisahin at bibisitahin ng Energy Regulatory Commission.
Salamat, Butch. May I raise a question at this point? Butch?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So my question is, with this almost 20-30% patong doon sa cost of capital nila, ganyan din po sa kuryente natin, napapatong po yung hindi dapat na isasama na gastos ng Meralco Kuno doon sa paggagawa po ng kuryente.
Yes, tama yan. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, go ahead. Tama. Sige, go ahead.
Tama yan, Kamentong. And lahat kasi yan, pass-through na cost kung tinatawag, or lahat yan halos recoverable. So, kung ano man ang ipinasa or ginastos ng Meralco at ipinasa ng ARC as recoverable, lahat yan, diretso, pupunin sa atin. May patong pa nga na yung 14.79%, which represents supposedly their cost of capital and their cost of investment. So lahat yan, tayo ang nagbabayad dyan. Dyan ang kahalagahan, Kamentong, ng proseso na hindi ginawa ng ERC mula noong 2014 or 2013, na kung saan ang proseso, dapat ang Meralco naglalahad sa Energy Regulatory Commission lahat ng gastusin nila tayo naman ng mga consumer ay magko-comment or mag-investigate or titingnan natin kung tama ba 'yon. Kasi Kamentong, sa ilalim ng Supreme Court decision, sa ilalim ng as recent as the decision ng Energy Regulatory Commission tungkol sa NGCP, kung saan dinisallow nitong Energy Regulatory Commission sa kasalukuyan yung mahigit 200 billion na hinihingi na revenues ng NGCP, 100 billion plus lang ang inaprubahan. Sa ilalim ng desisyon na yan, sinasabi, for a cost or an expense to be recoverable, it should be necessary, recurring, reasonable, and redounding to the benefit of the consumer. Kung hindi ito ilalahad ng Meralco sa ERC, hindi tayo bibigyan ng pagkakataon na atin itong suriin, paano natin malalaman kung ang expense na yan is prudent, reasonable, necessary, and redounding to our benefit as ruled in by the Supreme Court in the Meralco refund case in 2003.
Morning po, Butch. I'd like
Yeah,
to ask a question po for you.
Yes, please.
What are your thoughts po, yung suggestion po kanina na hindi ma-renew yung franchise ng Meralco noong 2028?
That as early as 2015, I already prepared a position paper for the revoking or the cancellation of the Meralco franchise. That was 2015. Ang basis ko for my position to revoke it, unang-una po, sa Meralco franchise, ang nakalagay sa Section 1, nakalagay po yung territory that they will serve and the business that they will provide. Ang territory po nila is defined as yung Laguna areas, specific po yung geographic areas where they will operate. And then specific po yung business nila, which is the distribution of electricity. Kung tingnan nyo po yung annual report ng Meralco, since about a decade ago or even longer and up to the present, ang basket of businesses that they offer certainly go beyond distribution. In fact, mayroon po ang Meralco partnership with a Metro Pacific company in Hong Kong, where the partnership invested in an 800 megawatt liquefied natural gas plant in Jurong, Singapore. So, paano po yan maitatabi mo sa Laguna, Manila, Pampanga, Bulacan territory as defined in Section 1 of the franchise tungkol dyan? Tapos mayroon pa pong provision doon sa franchise ng Meralco that they cannot share the franchise that is granted to them or the privilege that is granted to them with a foreign company. E paano nung nagkaroon sila ng partnership through Meralco Power Gen with a Metro Pacific company in Hong Kong to invest in Singapore? So as early as that time, sinabi ko na po na i-cancel na yung prangkisa na yan. Ngayon, one of the points that was raised in the House hearing last Wednesday is Meralco has attained an uneconomic size. Alam naman po natin na economies of scale say that kung malaki ka, dapat economies of scale, bababa yung presyo mo. Kinumpare nga po ng isang congressman, I think the congressman from the party list, sabi niya, Batelec, which is next to Meralco, has a lower distribution rate than Meralco, but the volume of the energy or electricity that it sells is just, I think, 800 megawatts. Ang Meralco po, thousands of megawatts. Bakit po wala tayong economies of scale na nararamdaman? So, ang bottom line po, if size does not redound to our benefit, if size does not result in reduced rate, then that means Meralco is at an uneconomic size, and it should be reduced to uneconomic size. As to the mechanics of how the reduction will be done, as to the award of the franchise that is going to be done, if it is split into 3, 4, or 5, or 2, that will depend on Congress, which is, after all, the franchise granting authority. Hindi po ba? But at least we should aspire towards an economic size that will result in benefit from shared economies of scale gains that can be derived from a franchise that is just about the right economic size to yield the kind of rates that will be least cost. Ang isa pong point dyan na Dan, in the franchise of Meralco, they are obligated to provide service in a least cost manner. Least cost manner. So, kung sinabi ba nga ng congressman, mas mababa pa yung supply rate ng Batelec, which is a much smaller utility, than Meralco, which is humongous, paano mo masasabing least cost yung supply ng Meralco na mas mataas doon sa a utility that is even smaller? What is that telling us? It is telling us that probably it is time that we reduce Meralco to the size of Batelec so that we can attain the kind of efficiency in cost and supply and production that Batelec has attained with its current size. In other words, Meralco is over big at this point.
So, Mr. Serbo, just one follow-up last question po. So, do you believe that the situation with Meralco is similar, the issue with Meralco is similar with ABS-CBN? You mentioned yung foreign partnership with yung Metro Pacific. Is it similar po? Yung foreign ownership or foreign investment, same with the ABS-CBN? Yung issue?
They are only similar insofar as there's a foreigner involved. But I think we should view this from different directions. In the case of ABS-CBN, there is, I think, in fact, a constitutional provision disallowing or banning foreign investments in media because they're a media company. In the case of Meralco, the franchise itself says that they cannot share the privilege granted under the franchise with any other company, even if not foreign. Again, let me just add as a footnote that Meralco Power Gen, which invested in the Jurong power plant, is a 100% owned subsidiary of Meralco. It is not Meralco itself that went into that investment. It is a 100% subsidiary. I'm not a lawyer, so it's up for the lawyers and the courts to decide whether the franchise can be circumvented by a 100% subsidiary. In other words, while it is clear in the franchise that the limitation is on Meralco, but because the one that invested is a subsidiary, maybe they're able to get around it. But are we going to allow them to get around it? Good morning, Prof.
Okay, Butch. This is Ado, Paglinawan.
I know. Glad to see you again.
Okay. Assuming that Meralco franchise will be divided into 3, does that mean that Meralco will have to divest itself from the 2?
I think so, but there's a precedent for that is fairly recent. We know what happened in Iloilo. The franchise was taken from what was the current franchise holder, and it was awarded to somebody else, and they were able to do it legally. I'm not familiar with the legalities about the current franchise holder and supplier in Iloilo, but I do know that there was a prior franchise holder, a previous franchise holder, who was divested of the franchise, or maybe divested may not be the word, whose franchise was not renewed, and a new franchise was given to somebody else. I don't know how they worked out the mechanics for the fixed assets that were literally taken over, because as we all know, it's a distribution system, it's wire-based, and there are fixed assets.
Okay, the last time we were talking, we were monitoring the regulatory periods.
Yes.
Regarding reset, review, and true up. Has there been any regulatory review since 2001? Please update me on this.
There has been none since 2011. The last regulatory reset was in 2011. The Energy Regulatory Commission in 2013 started the process for the rate reset for the 4th regulatory period, which should have started July 1 of 2014 to end June 30 of 2015 to kick off the 4th regulatory period. Unfortunately, the ERC is so incompetent that they were not able to follow through and complete the process. So what happened was in 2015, when when the rate of Meralco under the third regulatory period was going to lapse, Meralco applied with ERC for an interim average rate. The interim average rate, Kaado, was just the smooth maximum average price of the rate that was approved in 2011. This is the beef of Congressman Fernandez in the hearing. He said the 14.97% weighted average cost of capital was set in 2011 to govern for 4 years. The situation, the circumstances, and the factors bearing in on the setting of the WACC in 2011 were very much different in 2015. So it is a big a gross negligence on the part of Energy Regulatory Commission not to be able to undertake the rate reset in 2014.
So I'd just like to set the record straight. The law provides that there should be a regulatory period or a reconciliation period between overpayment of provisional increases versus overcollection versus underpayment. Okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now, since walang nangyayaring ganyan at walang up-to-date reconciliation ang ERC, hindi ko na sasabihin kung bakit. Basta, magkano sa estimate mo so far ang utang ng consumer sa Meralco o utang ng Meralco sa consumer as of today?
Let me just start, Kaado, with a bit of background on PBR. PBR is not a law, it is a rule issued by Energy Regulatory Commission itself, not guided or unfettered by any outside force. PBR is issued by the Regulatory Commission. In other words, you cannot understand why ERC will not be able to implement it and enforce it because it enforces it by itself. The basis of PBR is IPIRA, where ERC is empowered to adopt a rate-setting methodology that is fair to both the consumers and the utility. Now, as far as the meat of your question is concerned, as far as the amounts, let me just explain it initially by saying, Kado, under return on rate base, Meralco DSM charge was 79 centavos per kilowatt hour. Under rate and bundling, which was sometime around 2007, the rate of Meralco for DSM was about 96. On the first year of performance-based regulation in about 2008, the rate of Meralco was 1.22 per kilowatt hour. So from 76 to 90 plus to 1.22. At the peak of performance-based regulation, which was about 2011 or 2012, the rate was 1.64 per kilowatt hour. Presently, the rate is 135, going down a few centavos from what was approved as the interim average rate of 1.38 in 2015. That's one side of the equation. On the other side of the equation, let's track the net earnings of Meralco. And the return on rate base, net earnings of Meralco was 2.7 billion. That's 2,700 million pesos. Under unbundling, the net earning of Meralco was 3.2 billion, or that's about 3,200 million. Not bad. On the first year of PBR, net earnings of Meralco skyrocketed to 6 billion pesos per year. So that's 6,000 million. Today, recently Meralco announced that for the first 3 quarters of 2023, they already posted net earnings of 27 billion pesos. On the third regulatory period, Kaado, the return on capital that Meralco was charging to us was anywhere from 21 billion to 20 to 21 billion pesos per year. On those
Okay.
years, Meralco was pulling in net earnings of 19 billion to 20 billion a year.
Okay, I have to intervene at this point because of time, no, Butch?
Ay, sorry.
No, everything that you're explaining is very important. However, it'll redound to technical terms that the public can't really catch up with, no? Performance-based rate and so on and so forth. I just have 2 or 3 points to make to sum everything up. Number one, there is a report that Congressman Dan Fernandez is trying to reclaim 200 billion peso overprice of Meralco or overcharging. Is that correct?
I can understand that, and it is a figure that can be explained. On the regulatory asset base, the WACC and the return on capital alone, there is a computation that was put out by former ERC Commissioner Alfredo Non, where at the least case scenario, he's already saying that about 92 billion pesos was overcharged by Meralco on return on capital alone, based on an inflated WACC and an inflated appraisal of the asset base. Let me just add very quickly, as far as the appraisal of assets is concerned, the Supreme Court in 2019, they ordered or decided or declared that the optimized this depreciated replacement cost, which is currently being used by Meralco and allowed by Energy Regulatory Commission, is anti-consumer, and it ordered the Energy Regulatory Commission to come up with an alternative methodology that will be fair to the consumers. Unfortunately, and this came out in the hearing in the House, the Energy Regulatory Commission has filed a motion for reconsideration of that decision. So since 2019, that has not been implemented or enforced. Can you imagine if the asset base of 130 billion goes down to 92 billion, and then you apply a realistic WACC of 11%, that's going to cut the present return on capital at about 22 or 23 billion to about half of it. And even if it is half of it, Meralco is still going to earn billions of pesos on that.
Yes, Butch, second point. Now we've established that they're overcharging, they're over-collecting to the tune of 200 billion or so. My second point is this continues and will continue unless we recognize and stop regulatory capture. In other words, yung Energy Regulatory Commission na capture, na huli, na suhulan, na hawakan. Dati ni Danding Cojuangco, I don't know, maybe it's Manny Pangilinan now, pero nahawakan. Ito po ay resulta ng privatization. Dahil sa sobrang bilyon-bilyon, daang bilyon na kinikita po ng oligarchs po. They gain the power to control government agencies. No? So, I don't see any resolution unless we nationalize at least partially or in the majority or completely the power sector. It will also solve the imbalance of provincial power rates and the urban power rates by the economies of scale. So we have discussed this before, Butch, but we have 5 minutes for you to explain this, to analyze this. Go ahead.
Thank you. That's long enough. 5 minutes is quite long. Thank you. Yung comment yung nationalization. In the first place, noon pa natin sinasabi, they should not have been privatized. In the first place, what should be renationalized as the first item in the agenda should be the transmission company. Nagkamali lang nung unbundle ng industry. Ang una pang privatize is yung NGCP. Mabuti nga, sinita sila ngayon ng ERC, they're not going to overcharge us if ERC stands its ground. As far as regulatory capture is
Oops. Mike, we can't hear you, but we can't hear you.
is this fine?
We can hear you now. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I don't know how it unmuted by it on its own. But as I was saying, itong sa NGCP, dapat hindi ito pre-privatized, dapat ito ang i-nationalize. And it should remain in state hands for strategic reasons. And then lately, noong pinag-uusapan nga itong mga comparison in the region, in the ASEAN region of the rates, I remember somebody from ERC saying, or was it Meralco, na unlike the other areas in the region, hindi tayo vertically integrated. So are we saying na vertical integration is more efficient and better cost, least cost than an unbundled industry? So if we made a mistake in unbundling the industry 15 or 18 years ago, then let's admit that mistake and go back to a vertical integration. Kung state-owned, because remember, when NPC was practically vertically integrated, he was the sole buyer of electricity, they had generation assets, they were doing the high voltage transmission. Ang kuryente noon magkano? 5 pesos, 6 pesos per kilowatt hour. Ngayon what? 12.40 and 12.50 per kilowatt hour in my case. So if the object lesson in saying that we cannot compare with the other countries in the region because we're not vertically integrated, then by all means, let's go back to a vertically integrated but state-owned service facility.
All right. Thank you very much, Kabuch, for your presentation. We thank you very much for exposing the anomalies that is happening with Meralco and how it is anti-consumer.
Can
I'd
I
like to
make just
Go ahead. Last Tuesday.
just last footnote and a warning to our listeners. I earlier told Kaado na walang nangyaring rate reset, but there is an ongoing rate reset for the supposed fifth regulatory period that was started in 2022, last year. It's ERC case 2022-015. I'm an intervener in it. And it has already gone through several stages. But last September 28, Meralco filed a motion to withdraw its application for a rate reset for the fifth regulatory period. One of the pending issues that has not been resolved by the Commission at the time of the motion to withdraw is my motion for the production of documents and records. Because I am asking Meralco to submit documents and records to support their application. Just a little context. Advertising expense alone and regulatory liaison and compliance expense for the third regulatory period, Meralco obtained 2.2 billion pesos, I think, in advertising, but in their annual reports, it did not reach as much as 2 billion ang nagastos nila. So ngayon, gusto natin makita anong records ng mga advertising expense na yan. At saka bakit ang Meralco gagastos ng 2 billion advertising, ang the next advertising cost, the next lowest or the next lower is 211 million ng Sepalco. How come there's a big difference? So tayong mga customers ng Meralco should really get the details, the records from Meralco to explain why we are paying so much for the for their services. That's why I'm opposing the motion to withdraw. I'm asking ERC to compel Meralco to provide the documents and to go on with the process and hold Meralco accountable for the amounts that they have collected from us from 2012 to 2022.
All right. Thank you very much again, Butch. Again, thank you to everyone who joined us today in the audience, our media friends, and everyone joining us via Zoom, and everyone who will watch us in the Facebook live stream, in the replay and in YouTube. Once again, of course, thank you to our speakers, Kado Paglinawan, Mentong Laurel, Professor Ana Malindogoy, Ginoong RJ Havaliana, and Butch. Thank you very much for your presentation, and I hope the Filipino people and the government will be informed by this thought-provoking discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Butch. Thank you, RJ. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Kamentong. Thank you. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you to everyone. Have a great rest of your weekend.
alam mo, pag dinitali at hinimay lahat ng detalye sa advertising, yan ba si Saldariaga, may talent fee ba yan sa kanyang Meralco update?
Zaldriaga po.
Oh, yung si Saldariaga, siya yung lumalabas sa Meralco update. Is there a talent fee for that? So yun yung mga detalye na gusto natin kunin at himayin kung ano yan. In fact, one of the points ka, Mentong, kasi yung regulatory relation and compliance, yun ang ibinabayad sa mga abogado. Mag-u-oppose lang sila sa ating motion for additional time. 5 abogado ang pumipirma ng Meralco. Ngayon, ang question ko, anong cost ng 5 abogado signing for that? Is that... Sorry. Okay.
Thank you very much. Uulitin natin ito, Butch. Thank you.
I thought we were off the air, sorry.
Off the air na, off the air na.